I went to BeaverHacks 2026 completely alone. I have never done a hackathon before. I had no idea what to expect, and honestly, my mindset was I'm a senior, I'm about to graduate. What's the worst that could happen? 24 hours later, I was standing in front of judges presenting an AI language learning app that used Ray-Ban Meta glasses, Gemini 2.5 Flash, text to speech, review cards, and a phone camera version. And somehow, we made it all the way to the final round. So this is the story of how I joined my first hackathon, met a teammate randomly at the entrance, slept for only 2 hours, and learned one of the biggest lessons of my senior year. You don't need to feel ready to start. BeaverHacks 2026 was a 24-hour hackathon hosted by Oregon State University. And for me, this was kind of a now or never moment. I'm in my senior year, I'm getting ready to graduate, and I realized that I had gone through most of my computer science degree without ever going to a hackathon. So I thought, you know what, I might as well try at least once before I leave OSU. I didn't walk in thinking I was going to win. I didn't even walk in with some perfectly planned idea. I didn't even walk in with a team. My whole mindset was just give it a shot. If it works, great. If it doesn't, at least I can say I tried. And sometimes that's really all you need to get started. When I first got there, I ended up meeting this guy named Jaron, randomly near the entrance of the College of Engineering. We started talking and eventually we decided to team up. The funny part is, after we decided to work together, we realized that we already have been following each other on GitHub. So we technically knew each other online before we knew each other in person. My first impression of Jaron was that he seemed like a bright guy. He looked like someone who had a good head on his shoulders. And once we actually started working, that impression became even stronger. I just want to add a small detail, and we could have added 2 more people on the team, but Jaron said something that stuck with me. He basically said that sometimes more developers can make it harder to ship software, and that a smaller team might actually move faster. So we kept it at just the 2 of us, and honestly, I'm glad we did. The app we built was called LinguaLens. The idea was simple, but powerful. We wanted to build an app that helps people learn languages from all around the world, from the environment around them. So imagine wearing Ray-Ban Meta glasses, looking at an object, and the app tells you what that object is called in a language you're trying to learn. Instead of sitting down with flashcards and forcing yourself to study, your everyday environment becomes part of the lesson. You look at a chair, a table, a laptop, a door, or whatever is around you, and the app turns that into language practice. We built the app with the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, Flutter for iOS and Android, Gemini 2.5 Flash, text-to-speech, review cards, and a phone camera version. And by the time we demoed it, the app actually worked. We had the Ray-Ban preview working, full translation, text-to-speech, review cards, phone camera capture, and support for a dozen different languages. That part still feels kind of crazy to say because this was built in 24 hours. Once we had the idea, we got to work. I personally worked on the Gemini integration, the Meta Ray-Ban connection, saving lessons, and debugging with Jaron. And guys, Jaron was debugging a lot of the code I was writing. I'm not even going to lie, his expertise was top level. I think maybe because he's 36, but there were moments where I would be stuck on something and then he would look at it and immediately understand what was going wrong. That was one of the coolest parts of the whole experience for me because I got to work next to someone who really knew what he was doing. But even with that, it was not smooth the whole time. We were dealing with camera permissions, Meta glasses integration, mobile development, Gemini, text-to-speech, and all of the little bugs that show up when you try to force a real product into existence in one day. At one point, the app was literally throwing a camera permission denied error. And when you're building something for a hackathon, every error feels personal because the clock is always ticking. I do gotta say that the hardest part of the entire hackathon was not even the code. It was staying awake. I usually go to bed at 9 p.m. every day. That's my normal routine. But during this hackathon, I went to sleep at 5 a.m. and woke up at 7 a.m. 2 hours of sleep. And I didn't even sleep at the venue. Jaron and I decided to break off around 9 p.m. and continue working from our houses for the rest of the night. So I went home, kept working, slept for 2 hours, woke up, and then came back to keep going. That part was rough. There's a certain point where your brain is technically awake, but it feels like every thought has to go through a loading screen. But at the same time, there was something exciting about it, because we weren't just staying up for no reason. We were trying to make this thing actually work. The moment where everything finally clicked was when we connected the Ray-Bans to the base of the app. We were able to see what the Ray-Ban glasses were looking at through the phone. That was the moment where it went from being an idea to feeling like a real product. Before that, it was like, okay, we have code, we have pieces, we have a concept, but once the glasses connected and the preview worked, it felt real. That was the moment where everything we did and we looked at it and thought, okay, this might actually be ready to ship. And in a hackathon, that feeling is dangerous because it gives you hope. Now, suddenly, you're not just trying to survive the 24 hours, you're thinking, wait, could we actually win? Another cool part of BeaverHacks was just being around so many people building things. The venue was packed. Everywhere you looked, people were coding, talking, debugging, eating, presenting, and trying to finish before the deadline. I also met with the president of the club, and that was really a cool moment because he actually knew my posts and knew who I was, and that caught me off guard in the best way. He was super cool, and I even filmed a little moment when he was talking about catering Chipotle. Those are the small moments that make events like this memorable. Yes, it's about the project, but it's also about the people you meet, the random conversations, and the feelings of being surrounded by people who are all trying to build something. When it was finally time to present, we had to go through multiple rounds of interviews. Every round, projects would get eliminated. So at first, we presented LinguaLens, and we made it through the first round. At that point, we already felt accomplished. Then we moved to the second round, and that's when it started to hit us. We were not just practicing anymore, we were actually competing. Then we made it to the third and final round. And in that round, a Google engineer sat down with us and interviewed us about what we built. That was one of the biggest moments of the whole hackathon for me. We explained how LinguaLens worked, how we used Gemini 2.5 Flash, how the Ray-Bans preview worked, how the app generated language lessons, and how it saved them for review. And the Google engineer really liked that we used Gemini 2.5 Flash. At that point, I honestly thought we might win. Then came the final announcement. They started announcing the top 3, and I remember thinking to myself, okay, I don't know which rank we're going to be. And then after the top 3, the Google engineer said something like, and an honorable mention for LinguaLens. And that's when it hit me for how we had come. We didn't come first place. We ended up getting 4th place as an honorable mention. And that Google engineer handed me this banana plushie. Ta-da! It's the Gemini Nano Banana plushie. It's just like a good souvenir from the Google engineer, which is honestly kind of hilarious, but also weirdly meaningful. Because to me, that banana plushie represented the fact that I walked into this hackathon alone, not knowing what to expect, and somehow ended up being something in 24 hours that a Google engineer thought was cool. This is something I'm genuinely proud of. The biggest lesson I learned from BeaverHacks 2026 is that you don't need to feel ready to start. I went in alone. I didn't have a team. I didn't have hackathon experience. I didn't know exactly what we were going to build, and I definitely did not expect to make it to the final round. But I showed up anyway. And because I showed up, I met Jaron, we built LinguaLens, we presented to judges, and we walked away with an honorable mention. That's the part I keep thinking about. A lot of opportunities don't come with a guarantee. Sometimes you just have to walk into the room and see what happens. And yes, it might be uncomfortable. Yes, you might feel underprepared. Yes, you might be tired, confused, and debugging camera permissions at 3 a.m. in the morning. But you also might surprise yourself. So shout out to BeaverHacks 2026, shout out to OSU, and especially shout out for Jaron and for being an amazing teammate. This was my first hackathon, and honestly, it was one of the most memorable experiences of my senior year. And would I do another hackathon? Definitely. Would I stay up until 5 a.m. again? Probably not. But I'm glad I did it at least once, because now I can say that before I graduated, I walked into a 24-hour hackathon alone, built an AI app with the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, and left with a story I'll probably remember for a long time. And if there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, is this. You don't have to feel ready. Sometimes you just have to show up. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.